Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And this week we're discussing Chapter 1 of Golden Fool, Piebalds.
Yes, exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like reading that short story once again is giving more light to this whole situation. I don't know. It's making me think differently about the Piebalds and definitely the way that the people treat those who are witted.
Yeah, and the epigraph of this chapter, we've discussed it in the last book episodes as well. This is the epigraph that discusses an excerpt from Rowell's The Piebald Conspiracy, kind of discussing the origins of the Piebalds and what they were actually after. We definitely talked about it last book. And after reading the short story, you get a little bit more understanding of them, I guess, and of the why they claim the Piebald Prince and why they claim to worship the witted bastard and everything like that. So,
although these people wouldn't know the true story either necessarily. I guess there's an argument that maybe they do know the true story because potentially some of them are descendants of the people who fled the court who were part of the Piebald's court.
Right.
However, there's no way to know for sure how much they actually know of the real Piebald Prince. Charger. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of fun to think about too. I don't know. It's hard with stuff like that to know.
Yeah. So this epigraph says that the claim that the Piebalds said that they want freedom from persecution for the witted folk can be dismissed as both a lie and a clever deceit because they just wanted power. Their intent was to mold all of the witted folk of the Six Duchies into a united force that would rise up to seize control of the monarchy and put their own people into power. One facet of their ploy was to claim that all kings since the abdication of chivalry were pretenders, that the bastardy of Fitzchivalry Farseer was wrongly construed as an obstacle to his inheriting the throne. Legends of the true-hearted bastard rising from the grave to serve King Verity in his quest proliferated beyond all common sense, ascribing powers to Fitzchivalry that raised the bastard to the status of a near deity. For this reason, the Piebalds have also been known as the cult of the bastard.
This is also something that's really interesting, that we have the story of the bastard that... Chivalry's bastard that came alive from the dead, knowing that it is partially true and knowing that Fitz is still alive to sort of be aware of that. And there are people using his name to do things nefarious.
Right.
I feel like that's a really interesting concept to think on and goes back to this idea of like who's in charge of what stories get passed along. And then also, I think it's disingenuous for this writer to say that all of the Piebalds just wanted power. Obviously,
Correct.
A loud majority, or maybe minority, we don't really know, did want power. However, I don't think that's what all of them wanted. And I don't think even all of them knew how deeply the power grab was going.
And we don't know how far in the future this was written. We don't know if this was... in the next couple of years, or if this was 30 years down the line. But either way, for sure, the attitudes toward witted people aren't changing that much that quickly, right? Even if this guy is from the next generation, where they've already had a witted coterie, as I think they call it in this book, where Webb and the other people come in and they kind of advocate for witted people in the Six Duchies, there's still going to be some underlying sense of derision for these othered folk for a while. So they're going to, put the worst characteristics on these people as they possibly can, saying they wanted, every single one of these people who were doing it just wanted power.
Right. And then it goes into how they went after this power. So talking about how the claims of wanting peace was just a ridiculous claim intended to give some legitimacy to the Piebald quest to overthrow the Farseer monarch and put one of their own on the throne. To this end, the Piebalds began a clever campaign of forcing the witted to either unite with them or risk exposure. Perhaps this tactic was inspired by Cutwell Rawbread, leader of the Out Islanders during the Red Ship War, for it is said that he drew men to follow him not by his charisma, but by fear of what he would do to their homes and families if they refused to fall in with his plans. And I thought this was really important because we do know that the same person who was in charge of Cutwell Rawbread is communicating with the heads of the Piebald group,
Right.
which is the pale woman.
Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. This is an interesting tidbit in here because really it's for rereaders.
Yeah.
Because we don't know anything about how the other clans were kind of bullied and bribed and blackmailed into joining the Red Ship Wars at all. And this is hinting at it before we learned the truth from the Out Islanders themselves.
Not necessarily. We did have an excerpt last book that was all about Keble bullying his way into getting people to follow him. Not super in depth, but there was a touch on this.
There was a touch on it saying that he was charismatic and he did gather people to him. And then he switched his attentions to the Six Duchies once the pale woman, the white woman, came into view. And then his tactics switched.
I thought that his tactics switched after he couldn't gain more people with charisma alone.
I mean,
but it could
that
be
also
because
be true.
I know what happened, so I don't know. So yeah, interesting. It is sort of a little nod to the rereaders, though, for sure.
Basically, Rowell here outlines the Piebald's tactics where they would target a servant or somebody in the household that's very far from the center of this noble family and say, these people are witted. We will expose them and therefore bring down your house if you don't ally with us and do what we want. And then they would just move up the chain in that household until they had control of everyone.
Right. So they'd keep exposing people.
Or threatening to.
Yeah. I think it does say that they did expose the lower chain people to get the other people to work with them. But Rowell says this is not the action of a folk who wish to bring an end to persecution of their kin. This is the act of a ruthless faction determined to gain power for themselves, first by subjugating their own kind.
Which is definitely true. But again, going back to all Piebalds just wanted power. No, there are people who joined up with the cause because they thought they were doing something right. They needed to take action because the witted folk are persecuted in the Six Duchies.
Right. And I think as Fitz pointed out, a lot of the followers seem to be young people who are tired of not being allowed to use their gift openly. So I don't know. It is really interesting to read this. I also was wondering, do you know who Rowell is?
No, I do not.
Okay. Because I was wondering who he might be, if we know him, if we've heard of him.
Nope.
Interesting that we don't.
All of these excerpts, 70% of the excerpts, we don't really know who the authors are.
Right. But with something so in tune with the books that we're reading, I was wondering if it would be a named character we knew.
Nope, I don't think so.
No. So who would be writing about this?
Historians, scribes.
Okay, touche. For some reason in my mind, I was wondering who Chade would let write this, but then I guess Chade doesn't have a monopoly on the historians. And maybe
common knowledge at this point, right?
Yeah.
We pick up with Fitz pretty much exactly where he left off. He is sitting in Jinna's cabin, waiting for Hap.
Yes.
And at this point, it is very early morning almost, and not quite late at night anymore.
Night had
officially still not back.
Yeah, night had officially ended, and we were venturing towards morning, and still I sat in Jinna's cottage waiting for Hap to return.
Jinna and him are passing the time amiably. They are comfortable with small talk in between long stretches of silence. And it notes in here later that Fitz and Jinna have already gone through 3 pots of tea, but he keeps saying, yes, I'll have some more, because it's basically just an invitation like, hey, you are still welcome here.
Yeah.
And he can't really refuse without it being rude.
Right. So it's just this awkward, let's drink more tea. But they are sort of passing the time. They're chatting. They're having some conversations of where Fitz has been, and he has to sort of keep up the facade of he's working.
Tom Badgerlock, right?
Yeah, he's Tom Badgerlock. It was his master's thing that had to be done. It wasn't his trip. and that his master was able to find the feathers he was looking for.
Right.
And interestingly, Fitz does talk a little bit about how obviously it's the beginning of a book, so it's touching on what happened last chapter. There's the whole like, actually, we saved the prince from the
Right. There's a
Piebalds,
recap that is put in.
Exactly. But in that, Fitz mentions that Dutiful has been returned to Buckkeep, none of the nobles the wiser, but few would ever know how much the seamless continuation of their normality had cost the prince and me. The prince's wit cat had sacrificed her life for him. I had lost my wolf. And that was really interesting to me because Fitz's idea of loss here is centered around the wit partner's passing.
Yeah.
And there's no real mention of the mantle that Dutiful is putting on of responsibility and marrying a person he doesn't know and all this other things that like losing a woman, his first love, to find out she's actually evil. There's no mention of anything outside of wit partners being lost as the thing that they paid the price for to make everything go back to normal. And I just found that to be a really interesting detail.
I don't really agree. And I know that you're going to have some stuff highlighted in the next couple paragraphs because the next couple paragraphs do discuss that, right? It discusses Dutiful coming back into it and Fitz being like, I don't envy him.
Right.
But I think that was just like a narrative choice of like Fitz is moving from it's a recap. So Fitz is moving from his perspective to like, what are the other characters doing? So I think it was just kind of a writing choice.
Okay.
By Robin Hobb. I don't know. I didn't see that as Fitz only saying it was those two. I think those are the two that are closest to him and cut the most. And then he does sympathize with Dutiful for having to go right back into society, and because he can just kind of sit on the outskirts a little bit.
Sure.
I don't know. But Fitz does go into that a bit after he talks more about the loss of Night Eyes in this paragraph. And we talked about that quite a bit, especially in the prologue to this book, because Fitz kind of reminisces on the loss that he had with Night Eyes. But this, once again, we are thrown into where we left off with the last book, very fresh loss of Night Eyes. And he says, it was as profound a change in my life as the snuffing of a lamp makes in an evening room. His absence seemed a solid thing, a burden I must carry in addition to my grief. Nights were darker, no one guarded my back for me, yet I knew I would continue to live. Sometimes that knowledge seemed the worst part of my loss. So he says he reigns back from plunging fully into self-pity, and then this is where he talks about the prince, knowing that he's not the only one who suffered such a big loss, because even though the prince and the cat had a short bond, no one can really judge the depth of that bond. And he also lost his bond partner. Yet the boy had mastered his grief and was stalwartly going through the motions of fulfilling his duties. At least I did not have to face my betrothal tomorrow night. The prince had been plunged immediately back into his routine since we returned to Buckkeep yesterday afternoon. Last night he had attended the ceremonies that welcomed his bride-to-be. Tonight he must smile and eat, make conversation, accept good wishes, dance, and appear well pleased with what fate and his mother had decreed for him. I thought of bright lights and skirling music and laughter and loud conversations. I shook my head in sympathy for him. So I think it was just kind of a flow of narrative for Robin Hobb there. Because I don't think it was not in an equal place of importance. I think it was just one after the other, because first and foremost, Fitz is our narrator, and Night Eyes, the loss of Night Eyes is always going to be closest to him.
That's fair.
Jinna asks what makes him shake his head like that, Tom Badgerlock. And he comes up with a relatively innocuous lie. And again, they're just kind of friendly, and yet there's this tension between them.
Right. Fitz talks about how this sort of placid companionship of a pleasant woman was a novel experience for Fitz, which is really funny knowing that he spent the last however many years spending a few nights every couple months with Starling.
Yeah.
So to say that placid companionship was novel is kind of interesting.
I would not describe Starling as placid, so.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm sure there wasn't companionable silence most of the time. But it is interesting to have him sort of sit in this domestic setting, and it's very calming to him, but also he can't really feel 100% at ease. But he does talk about how some of the things that they get into discovering about each other because they're sharing this time together. And one of those things is how old each other are.
Yeah.
Or how old he's pretending to be and how old Jinna actually is. So I had discovered she was about 6 years younger than I truly was. And she expressed surprise when I claimed to be 42. That was 7 years past my true age. So Fitz is 35 and Jinna is 29.
Mm-hmm.
The extra years were part of my role as Tom Badgerlock. And I think it's really funny here that he thinks he can get away with saying he's 42 when we know that he doesn't necessarily look that old.
He looks older, but I think Lord Golden says at some point, like, if people actually like really looked at you, they could tell you were not 40.
Yeah.
But like on passing glance, he looks old because of his scars and his gray streak and stuff like that, I think.
True. Although, you know what? People age differently. I'm really bad at guessing ages. So if somebody was like, I'm 42 and they looked 20 to me, I'd be like, okay. Maybe I just don't know what 42 looks like.
Well, and Jinna is very nearsighted, we know.
Yes. So, but he's all pleased that she thought that he was much closer to her age.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about the tension that's between them, which is sort of there underneath everything, the companionable silence. And at one point, they do end up kissing. And then they're interrupted by Jinna's niece coming in, and then they don't really know how to pick that back up.
Yeah, he says that was right before he had left on his errand with Lord Golden, right? That was the last book. So
yes,
she had kissed him basically goodbye, or not really goodbye in the moment, but we're interrupted, as you said, by the niece, and he had to kind of dismiss himself to go on that errand. And now they're back and they're still friendly with one another, but where do you go from there, right? Like, what do you say?
And how do you rekindle that romance? It's just sort of a weird place for both of them because they're not really sure where they stand. And Fitz mentions, for my part, I was not sure that I wished to venture there. I was not ready for even a second kiss, let alone what it might bring. My heart was too raw, yet I wanted to be here, sitting before her fireside. It sounds a contradiction, and perhaps it was. I did not want the inevitable complications that caresses would lead to, yet in my wit bereavement, I took comfort in this woman's company. And I find that really interesting because I don't know where he's getting the idea that a physical relationship would complicate things, considering how he and Starling were this whole time. And maybe that's what it was, but I don't think that relationship complicated their own friendship. I think that's just their personalities not mixing and not seeing eye to eye of what things were. So I did find it really interesting to have him here and be like, oh, a physical relationship would make things too complicated.
But also, like, with his loss with Night Eyes, I don't think he feels like he's worthy of that love of another person again, right?
Right.
He needs to kind of sulk by himself. And we talked about that in the prologue as well, with him kind of choosing to be alone.
Right. And I think that choosing to be alone is really apt for this moment because he could absolutely choose to let Jinna in, right? And I'm not saying that he has to be physical with her for that to happen, but there is a very distinct setting apart of who he is with this Jinna moment, right? Like, he is just visiting her world and he's planning on leaving it. Like, he doesn't want to entangle with it. He just wants the comfort of being there for right now and no promises made to continue being friends or caring about Jinna. And
Yeah.
that sounds very cynical. I don't mean it to. I just think that's a cut and dry version of what's sort of going on here, the subtext. So it is cool, or like not cool, but it's interesting to see that character here very pronounced of that like decision to stay apart from.
Mm-hmm. But Fitz isn't only there for Jinna. He's there to see Hap, who he has not really seen, and also, unfortunately, pass along the news that Night Eyes has died. With Hap, I could share my grief, however selfish a thing that might be. Hap had been mine for the last 7 years. We had shared a life, and the wolf's companionship. If I still belonged to anyone or anything, I belonged to my boy. I needed to feel the reality of that. So Jinna offers another pot of tea, and he has to, as I mentioned before, kind of accept out of politeness. But then there is a pounding at the door, and Hap is slurring, "Jinna, are you awake?"
She says she is, and then says it's lucky for Hap that she is, or else he'd be sleeping in the shed with his pony. And then she unlocks the door, and Fitz stands up, and then making the cat mad because Fennel is in his lap. So he says Fitz is an imbecile. The cat was comfortable. And then the storm pushes in with Hap, and Hap sort of stands there with the door open, just eyeing everything. And Jinna has to remind him to close the door.
"It's wild and wet out there," he told her. His smile was beatifically drunk, and his eyes were lit with more than wine. Infatuation shone there, as unmistakable as the rain slipping from his hair lank and running down his face. It took him a moment or two to realize that I was there, watching him. Then, Tom, you've finally come back." He flung his arms wide in a drunkard's ebullience for the ordinary, and I laughed and stepped forward to accept his wet hug. "Don't get water all over Jinna's floor," I rebuked him. "No, I shouldn't." "Well, I won't then," he declared, and dragged off his sodden coat. He hung it on a peg by the door and peeled off his wool cap to drip there as well. He tried to take his boots off standing, but lost his balance. He sat down on the floor and tugged them off. He leaned far to set them by the door under his wet coat, and then sat up with a blissful smile. "Tom, I've met a girl." "Have you? I thought you'd met a bottle from the smell of you." "Oh, yes," he admitted unabashedly. "That too. But we had to drink the prince's health, you know, and that of his intended. And to a happy marriage, and for many children, and for as much happiness for ourselves." He gave me a wide and fatuous smile. "She says she loves me. She likes my eyes." "Well, that's good." How many times in his life had folk looked at his mismatched eyes, one brown and one blue, and made the sign against evil? It had to be a balm to meet a girl who found them attractive. And Fitz decides then, briefly, that, okay, I can't really burden him with Night Eyes just tonight. Not yet.
Which is really funny because, like, a paragraph later, he does tell him.
Right.
But yeah, so Hap is back, and we sort of get an interesting look into the young man Hap is becoming, right? And sort of the lackadaisical way that Fitz is handling this, which we ended last book with him saying,
"I'll let a boy be a boy for a time and make mistakes." Right?
Yes, like that's he's going to make mistakes. I'm going to let him do that. But it's really interesting here that was when it was just sort of late, and now it's early morning, and he has a job in an hour to get to.
And Fitz reminds him of that.
Yes, and he is still sort of really lighthearted about the whole thing. At no point is Fitz in his head screaming alarm bells of like, hey, this isn't great. This isn't good choices. I'm not seeing my son making good choices. He's sort of just like, oh, Hap, he's so happy. I'm glad he had a good time tonight. And it's only later when Jinna brings up like, hey, you need to take a strong hand with him, that he's sort of like, I don't know, it's my kid. I'll do what I want. But especially in this moment, you don't really see any worry from Fitz, which I think is interesting.
Which, I mean, again, going back to the last book, he decided not to, be too worried, right, for this instance. And he hasn't been around Hap, and Jinna has seen him more in the last few weeks. So Fitz is probably thinking, it's not that bad. He can have a love I've been reminiscing and, nostalgic for my time as a boy in Buckkeep. So let him have his love and his fun for a little bit. So that's kind of where they are. And Jinna keeps trying to push it. And he's just like, I'll look into it.
Yeah, I guess it just is interesting to me because of how frustrated he was with Dutiful's abandoning of his duties upon first meeting him without really knowing the pattern, without knowing anything else. And then here he has this son in front of him that he's raised, and it's sort of like, oh, well, duties are duties. He's just a kid.
He has gone through a lot since those two meetings.
Yes. I don't know. I just find something interesting about that sort of lack of urgency here. And
yeah.
I think also something that really comes through is that this could be partially due to the grief that Fitz is feeling. I think something that comes back into play over and over again is that Fitz doesn't do well noticing his surroundings when he is grieving something. And
right, especially without Night Eyes, who was half of his senses,
Right. And so I think with this, he's going through that grief of Night Eyes. I think this puts me in mind of later with B, how he acts after Molly passes, how there are things that should spark sort of a worry. And if it was normal times, maybe he would catch on.
Right.
But with grief, he sort of overlooks those as not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And so here with Hap, it's more about like, oh, I'm so happy he's found someone who likes him. And I can understand why it would feel nice to have somebody like you for something everybody has been making fun of you for your whole life. And so it's sort of more lackadaisical and more thinking about like, oh, I don't want to ruin this happiness.
Yeah. When Fitz brings up his job, like, hey, you have to get there early in the morning, Hap is all of a sudden, not as smiley anymore. And he's like, oh yeah, I guess so. I have to get up there really early. Tom, this apprenticeship hasn't been what I expected at all. He explains that he does like the menial chores, right? He sweeps, carries board, turns the wood, he rubs oil into something. He doesn't touch any of the tools besides that. And then he sweeps again. It's all, watch how this is done, boy, or repeat back what I just told you, and this isn't what I asked for. Take this back to the woodstock and bring me the fine-grained cherry, and be quick about it. And Tom, they call me names, Country Boy and Dullard. Gindast calls all his apprentices names, Hap. Jinna's placid voice was both calming and comforting, but it was still strange to have a third person include herself in our conversation. It's common knowledge. One even took the taunt with him when he went into business for himself. Now you pay a fine price for a simpleton table. I tried not to show how much Hap's words distressed me. I had expected to hear that he loved his position and how grateful he was that I had been able to get it for him. I had believed that his apprenticeship would be the one thing that had gone right. Well, I warned you that you would have to work hard, I attempted. And Hap says, I am ready for that. But I'm so bored. I was ready to cut wood and shape it all day. But this is so boring. I might as well have stayed at home for all I'm learning here. Few things have such sharp edges as the careless words of a boy. His disdain for our old life, spoken so plainly, left me speechless. I feel like that is a very true scene written out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. I think on the one hand, I'm frustrated with Hap because that's what being an apprentice is. You have to prove that you can do the basics before you can go up.
Yeah.
And
remember, he started older than other apprentices.
Right.
He should probably be nearing the end of his apprenticeship and moving to journeyman.
Right. And I think
soon.
One of the frustrations I have with Fitz in this is him taking more offense or not offense, but being more worried about the fact that it's not living up to the expectations of a teenager than he is at being like, hey, that's what real work is. You have to work at it. And eventually you'll get there, but you need to stick out until you get there. Like, you have to prove that you're in it. This is how they weed out the people who don't want to be there. And he just doesn't. He sort of just gets disheartened by the fact that it's not everything the boy wanted and more.
And also the insult to his old life.
Yes. And again, I feel like part of this is hard because Hap is drunk and Fitz is grieving, and so he's not necessarily in the best headspace to be having this. And Fitz has been going through this whole thing of like, what even is life? Do I make good choices? I feel like I'm always making the wrong choice. And then here he has his boy be like, this is actually the worst. I never wanted this. Which, I mean, isn't that a teenager thing to do? To be like, right. I really, really, really want it. I'll do good, I swear. And then
I'll play with this all the time. I'll use it every day.
You give them what they want and they're like, I didn't want this. Even if you explained it 100 times ahead of time. It's just life. That's teenagers. But I think it's interesting that Fitz doesn't push more of like, yeah, that's life. Instead, he's like, oh no, it's not what he wanted. How do I fix it? And it's just strange because I don't see Fitz as being like that to a lot of his kids, but for some reason in this moment he's like, man, I wish I could make it better. Instead of like, this boy needs to learn discipline.
It's his first time. Hap lifted his eyes to mine accusingly. And where have you been? Why have you been gone so long? Didn't you know that I'd need you? Then he squinted at me. What have you done to your hair? I cut it, I said. I ran a self-conscious hand over my morning-shortened locks. I suddenly did not trust myself to say more than that. He was just a lad, I knew, and prone to see all things first and how they affected himself. But the very brevity of my reply alerted him that there was much I had not said. What happened? He demanded. I took a breath. No help for it now. Night Eyes is dead, I said quietly. But is it my fault? He ran away from me, Tom, but I did look for him. I swear I did. Jinna will tell you. It wasn't your fault. He followed and found me. I was with him when he died. It was nothing you did, Hap. He was just old. It was just his time, and he went from me. Despite my efforts, my throat clenched down on the words. The relief on the boy's face that he was not at fault was another arrow in my heart. Was being blameless more important to him than the wolf's death? But when he said, I can't believe he's gone, I suddenly understood. He spoke the exact truth. It would take a day, perhaps several, before he realized the old wolf was never coming back. Night Eyes would never again sprawl beside him on the hearthstones, never nudge his hand to have his ears scratched, never walk at his side to hunt rabbits again. Tears rose in my eyes. You'll be all right. It'll just take time, I assured him thickly. Let's hope so, he responded heavily. And he sends him off to bed. He's like, yeah, I suppose I'd better. Tom, I'm so sorry. And he hugs Tom. You'll come by tomorrow night, won't you? I need to talk to you. It's very important. I'll come by tonight if Jinna does not mind. And she does not mind.
Right. Yeah, so this is hard. Again, Fitz started out well with the, maybe this isn't the right time to tell him. And then immediately was like, well, I guess I got to tell him. I've been backed into a corner. Mind you, fully trained assassin who should be able to lie with the best of them, but can't lie in this moment, which is fair. But I just found it a little bit funny that he can't just be like, nothing big, I'll tell you later. But also, again, we see that Fitz is a little bit touchy around Night Eyes' death and sharing that sorrow. Yeah. Because he did come into this thinking, finally, someone I could share the sorrow with. And then he's hurt at the reaction that Hap is having. Like, he doesn't feel as though Hap is mourning correctly, which is a big statement. But I think that's the vibe he's giving off, is like, that's where the hurt is coming from, that he was expecting more. He wanted somebody to be on his level. And when Hap doesn't display that, it's really disappointing. And
it also, he understands why.
Right. Yeah, he does at least get there where he's like, oh, obviously he just, like, first of all is drunk, and second of all, it hasn't hit him yet. I was literally there, so I know it's real.
Yeah.
And so I do think that is another sort of Fitz trait to like really have high expectations of how other people are going to react, and not really knowing what to do when they don't meet those expectations.
Yeah. Jinna won't mind at all if Tom Badgerlock comes by tonight as well. And I hoped only I could hear the extra note of warmth in her voice. So, I'll see you tonight, when you're sober. Now to bed with you, boy. And then Fitz is like, well, I gotta go then. Thanks for letting me wait for Hap. And he grabs the cloak from the pack by the door, and she reached up suddenly to fasten it for me. She pulled the hood of it up over my shorn head and then smiled as she tugged at the sides of the hood to pull my face down to hers. Good night, she said breathlessly. She lifted her chin. I put my hands on her shoulders and kissed her. I wanted to, and yet I wondered that I allowed myself to do it. Where could it lead, this exchange of kisses, but to complications and trouble? Did she sense my reservations? As I lifted my mouth from hers, she gave her head a small shake. She caught my hand in hers. You worry too much, Tom Badgerlock. Some things are far less complex than you think they are. I felt awkward, but I managed to say, if that were true, it would be a sweet thing. Such a courtier's tongue. Her words warmed me until she added, but gentle words won't keep Hap from running aground. You need to take a firm hand with that young man soon. Hap needs some lines drawn, or you may lose him to Buckkeep Town. He wouldn't be the first good country lad to go bad in a town. I think I know my own son, I said a bit testily. Perhaps you know the boy. It's the young man I fear for. Then she dared to laugh at my scowl and add, save that look for Hap. Good night, Tom. I'll see you tomorrow. So this is where, again, like as you mentioned before, Fitz is a little like, I know Hap. Like, don't intrude on my conversations with Hap. It's just a little weird because he has been living alone with Hap for 7 years, right?
Right.
He's never had that other person be concerned enough.
Well, I also feel like it must be a weird sensation because he's never, I mean, I don't want to say never had a mother figure, but there's not been a time in his life where he had a mother and father figure working together. Right.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, Patience was is his mother to him, and she was there for part of his childhood, but she never worked with Verity in the same room. He never went to both of them with his problems.
Right. It's always one person raising a kid.
Yes. And he hasn't had great father figures really to look towards. So in this moment, especially earlier when Hap is talking to the both of them and Jinna cuts in and he feels that awkwardness about having that third person, I do wonder if part of that is because he's not
used to it at all.
He's not used to a situation. Starling didn't take a motherly role.
Oh,
Starling was not.
God, no.
She was not like giving her opinions about how Hap should be raised. She was waiting for Hap to leave the room. Like, so I think it's really interesting to add that layer on where Fitz has never really seen this dynamic play out before, let alone had the opportunity to try it out himself. And so, of course, it's going to be extra awkward and clunky. And it is sort of raising his hackles a bit to sort of think of another person being in charge. It is a little bit, in my opinion, an overstep on Jinna's part, just because she doesn't know Hap super well. However, he is staying in her house. So it does probably affect her reputation if he isn't great too in some way.
Jinna just seems like that kind of person too anyways. You know, she has her younger niece in the house as well. So I'm sure she kind of helped raise her niece a little bit.
Yes. And I mean, I say that as someone who I absolutely would be putting my nose in it. I'm an older sibling. I have 4 younger siblings. If I see a kid not doing what they're supposed to, I parent. I get in there, I parent. Sorry. It's not a good habit, but I do it. So I'm also a Jinna, but I do think it is a little bit of an overstep and it feels weird because they don't, like, who are they to each other, you know?
Right.
Like,
realistically. They've known each other for max 2 months.
Yeah. And of those 2 months spent 5 days maybe total together.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like it's a little strange, but she does a little bit know Hap. He is staying at her house. It's not that big of a deal for her to tell Fitz what he's missing.
Right.
I think it's good of her to do so, but it is probably extra weird for Fitz in this moment. And I do wonder, with this kiss scene, is there something else going on than what Fitz is narrating? Like, Fitz thinks that the complication conversation, like, if it doesn't have to be complicated, is about the kiss and their relationship. Do you think that's true as well? Or is this about Hap?
No, I think it's about the kiss.
Okay.
I think it's about maybe some of his body language and Jinna just being like, you're worrying too much about this. Like, let's just enjoy it.
Okay. Okay.
They wave farewell to each other, and he walks out into the night back towards Buckkeep Castle. He says, usually the taverns had torches set in sconces to guide customers to their doors, but at this hour they were either burned out or taken down. Most of the taverns and inns had closed their door for the night. All the decent folk were long abed, and most of the indecent ones too. I hurried through the cold, dark streets, guided more by my sense of direction than my eyes. It would be even darker once I left the cliffside town behind and began the winding climb through the forest toward Buckkeep Castle. But that was a road I had known since my childhood. My feet would lead me home. So again, we get another couple references in here to things being too dark. And we never really had that much before with Night Eyes around. So again, going back to the prologue and the discussion we had there, half of his senses were gone because of that loss as well. And Fitz isn't fully aware of it consciously yet.
Right.
He's just like, things are so dark. All of this pain is just the pain of the loss, not just my senses.
Yes. So we have that as well. And then interestingly says that his feet will lead him home.
Yeah.
Calls Buckkeep his home. I thought that was really a little bit of a slip there.
I don't think it's a slip because since Night Eyes died, I think that is the only home he has now.
Okay.
I think he would have still, if Night Eyes was around. I mean, he did promise to teach the prince, but in this alternate reality, if Night Eyes was around, maybe he wouldn't have promised. And I think he would try to leave again.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was like a touching little detail there. Like,
it is.
Buckkeep is his home at the end of the day, and he knows his way there. But as he is going home, he notices that he's being followed.
Yes, and he knows he is being followed because he slows down and they slow down. He speeds up, they speed up.
Yes. And he knows that once he leaves the last of the little houses, that's when they're going to strike, because then they'll be away from anyone who could possibly see them. And he thinks about how he's been kind of stupid because he left unarmed. And that's his country ways sneaking up on him, because he has a belt knife, but that's really just for menial chores throughout the day. It's not really going to help protect him. And he left his sword back in the keep.
Right. Doubtless they believed me drunk and unaware of them, and as soon as I fought back, they would flee. It was thin solace. I had no wish to fight at all. I was sick of strife and weary of being wary. I doubted they would care. So I halted where I was and turned in the dark road to face those who came after me. I drew my belt knife and balanced my weight and waited for them. And everything is silent for a long time, until eventually he grows impatient and yells out, "Come on, then. I've little enough for you to take, save my knife, and you won't get that hilt first. Let's get this done with."
He then says that it's so silent afterwards for an amount of time that he feels almost like maybe he imagined the whole thing.
Yeah, it feels very foolish.
And then something ran across his foot. It was a small animal, lithe and swift, a rat or a weasel, or perhaps even a squirrel. But it was no wild creature, for it snapped a bite at my legs as it passed. It unnerved me, and I jumped back from it. Off to my right, I heard a smothered laugh. Even as I turned toward it, trying to peer through the gloom of the forest, a voice spoke from my left, closer than the laugh had been. "Where's your wolf, Tom Badgerlock?" Both mockery and challenge were in the words. Behind me, I heard claws on gravel, a larger animal, a dog perhaps, but when I spun about, the creature had melted back into the darkness. I turned again to the sound of muffled laughter. At least 3 men, I told myself, and 2 wit beasts. I tried to think only of the logistics of this immediate fight and nothing beyond it. I'm going to stop there because I want to point out that nowhere in that excerpt is he talking about sensing them before they came at him.
Right.
Or being able to tell exactly what the animals are with his wit sense.
Mm-hmm.
I found that tidbit really interesting because up until this point, he seems to be very in tune with knowing not only where people are, but what animals are around him, even without being able to see them fully. And especially with this darkness, he doesn't even notice the rat until it's, or whatever it is, until it's on his foot. That's crazy. Fitz has an amazing wit sense. Like, he can sense beings all the time in ways that are surprising. And so I really think that speaks to not only the loss of Night Eyes, which would have helped with his senses, but potentially what the grief is doing to cloud his wit senses.
And what he's doing to his own senses. Because it says in the next couple lines here, I opened my senses fully to the night. And I remember in the last book, we discussed him becoming aware of the prince's keening for the loss of his partner through the wit.
Yes.
And then therefore his own and his perpetual stretching out and trying to find someone new. And he says that he shut that down in himself.
Right.
So I think he's just been holding himself tight and not allowing his wit to spread out anywhere.
Right. And
because he doesn't want to search out someone new. He doesn't want all of this, kind of disregarding what he uses that as his senses.
Right. And I do think that there's something interesting about that because in this moment, it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction when he knew he was being followed to open those wit senses right then.
Right.
Like, that's how hurt he is that he's still holding tight those feelings.
His instincts are dulled for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just find that detail really important and like something we should bring up.
This time I heard the scuttle as the smaller beast approached. I kicked at it more wildly than I had intended, but caught it only a glancing blow. It was gone again. I'll kill it, I warned the crouching knight, but only mocking laughter met my threat. Then I shamed myself, shouting furiously, What do you want of me? Leave me alone! They let the echoes of that childish question and plea be carried off by the wind. The terrible silence that followed was the shadow of my aloneness. Where is your wolf, Tom Badgerlock? A voice called, and this time it was a woman's, melodic with suppressed laughter. Do you miss him, renegade? The fear that had been flowing with my blood suddenly turned to the ice of fury. I would stand here, and I would kill them all and leave their entrails smoking on the road. My fists that had been clenched on my knife haft suddenly loosened, and a relaxed readiness spread through me. Poised, I waited for them. And he's imagining the fight now, and just waiting, fully into his own senses, what he was trained for, kind of ready for the fight.
Right. Better to wait and force them to come to me than I would kill them all. I really think it's important to point out here how at first there's fear and Fitz isn't really thinking about stance or how he's going to protect himself or how the fight will play out. And as soon as the taunting touches his anger, it flips to assassin and he needs to kill them all. There's not really an in-between. There's not just a fight enough, leave them alive so I can question them. And I think it goes back to sort of that trauma that he has through being beaten to death is that when it becomes this taunting thing, when it becomes something that they're making fun of him for, they're going to beat him up and they're making fun of him, it like triggers him in a way. And so then it becomes they need to die.
Yeah.
And there's no middle ground. No, like I should be poised and ready for the fight and I need to keep them alive.
I think there was a little bit of surprise too at the beginning because he thought they were just brigands, potentially like people coming to rob him. And then all of a sudden
it's about him.
Wit beasts and it's about him. Yeah.
And
so I think when they mock him far enough and then repeatedly touch on Night Eyes, I think then, yeah, he gets flipped to anger quite easily. And
I think realizing how afraid he is also flips him to anger. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he likes being afraid of being cornered.
He doesn't want to be helpless.
Right. Which I say that as though anyone would be fine being cornered and afraid. But I think especially we know with Fitz, that really pushes him to the edge. And so he sits and waits, but he waits until the sun is starting to rise and no one's there. They've gone. My stalkers were gone. The little creature that had snapped at me had left no traces of his passage on the wet stone of the road. The larger animal that had crossed behind me had left a single print in the mud at the road's edge. A small dog, and that was all.
So he resumes his walk and begins to tremble, not out of fear, but the tension and the fury that is left with him just waiting for that fight to happen.
Right. And he wants to know why. What did they want? Was it to scare me, to make me aware of them, to let me know that they knew what I was and where I'd end? Well, they had done that and more. I forced my thoughts into order and tried to coldly assess the full threat they presented. I extended it beyond myself. Did they know about Jinna? Had they followed me from her door? And if so, did they know about my boy as well? I cursed my own stupidity and carelessness.
Yeah, he talks about here, like, how could I ever think that the Piebalds would just leave me alone? They knew who I was.
Right, and he a little bit starts to spiral because now he's worried about what this means for Hap, what it means for Jinna. Are they going to accuse them of being witted? Are they going to accuse him? Do they know that he's connected to the prince? Is he going to be the lever that the Piebalds now use to get to the prince?
He says that, like, they could have easily just posted a scroll saying that I was witted and I would be, hung and quartered. But they hadn't done that, so why?
I should have known that this would happen. Once I plunged back into Buckkeep's court and politics and intrigue, I had become vulnerable to all the plotting and schemes and power it attracted. I had known this would happen, I admitted bitterly, and for some 15 years, that knowledge had kept me away from Buckkeep. Only Chade and his plea to help the recovering Prince Dutiful had lured me back. Cold reality seeped through me now. There was only two courses open to me. I either had to sever all ties and flee, as I had once before, or I had to plunge fully into the swirling intrigue that had always been the Farseer court at Buckkeep. If I stayed, I would have to start thinking like an assassin again, always aware of the risks and threat to myself and how they affected those around me. Then I wrenched my thoughts into a more truthful path. I'd have to be an assassin again, not just think like one. And that's what he comes to. He realizes that he has to not let himself become a lever used against Prince Dutiful.
Yep. It was their handle on the prince, the lever they would use not just to end the persecution of those with the wit, but also to gain power for themselves. It was no help to me that my sympathies in part were with them. My furious striding carried me up to the sentries at the gate of Buckkeep, and I think this scene is really funny because this is old Fitz. Like, we get this scene almost word for word in, like, the first trilogy.
Yes. And Fitz goes Karen mode.
Yeah.
He goes by the guard door. He's
like a lad of 20.
Yeah. He looks at him, nods him through. And Fitz doubles back and says, "Do you know who I am?" And the guy gets scared thinking he might be a minor noble or something that he offended, and then realized that by his clothing, it can't be a noble. And he goes, "You're a servant in the keep, aren't you?" "Whose servant?" I demanded. Foolishness to call attention to myself this way, and yet just now I could not stop the words. Had others come this way before me last night? Were they inside the keep even now? Had a careless sentry admitted folk bent on killing the prince? It all seemed too possible. "Well, I don't know," the boy sputtered. He drew himself up straight, but still had to look up to glare at me. "How am I supposed to know that? Why should I care?" "Because, you damned fool. You are guarding the main entrance to Buckkeep Castle. Your queen and your prince depend on you to be alert and to keep their enemies from walking in. That is why you're here, isn't it?" Which is so funny because, again, this is very early in the morning.
Yeah.
Fitz has been out all night and he's coming and he's frustrated about something else and he is taking his anger out on this poor kid who's just doing his job. not well, to be fair.
The guard calls out the captain, Kespin, and he comes out and says, "Is there a problem here?" His voice was not a warning, but an assurance that he could deal with either of us as we deserved. The sentry says he's angry because I don't know whose servant he is. What? I'm Lord Golden's servant, I clarified, and I'm concerned that the sentries on this gate seem to do no more than watch folk go in and out of the keep. I've been walking in and out of Buckkeep Castle for over a fortnight now, and I've never been challenged once. It doesn't seem right to me. A score of years ago, when I visited here, the sentries on duty took their task seriously. There was a time when that was needed, Kespin interrupted me, during the Red Ship War. But we're at peace, man. And the keep and the town are full of out-islander folk and nobility from the other duchies for the prince's betrothal. You can't expect us to know them all. I swallowed, wishing I hadn't started this, yet determined to follow it to its end. It only takes one mistake for our prince's life to be threatened, or one mistake to insult some out-islander noble. My orders come down from Queen Kettrikin, and she said we were to be welcoming and hospitable, not suspicious and nasty, though I'd be willing to make an exception for you. The grin he gave me somewhat modified his words, yet it was still clear he did not enjoy my questioning of his judgment. And Fitz is just like, "Oh, okay, I see. I but wondered." And he says, "Next time you ride that tall black mare out of here, remember that a man doesn't have to say much to know a lot. And as long as you've made me wonder, what is your name?" "Tom Badgerlock, servant to Lord Golden." "Ah, his servant," he smiled knowingly. "And his bodyguard, right? Yeah, I'd heard some tale of that. And that isn't all that I heard about him. You're not what I expected he'd choose to keep by him." He gave me an odd look as if I should make some reply to that, but I held my tongue, not knowing what he was implying. After a moment, he shrugged. "Well, trust some foreigner to think he needs his own guard even while he lives in Buckkeep Castle. Well, go on with you."
We know you now, and I hope that helps you sleep better at night.
Yeah. Interesting interaction there. One is, he shouldn't bring attention to himself like that, but also the mention about Lord Golden and his bodyguard.
Yes, and how he's heard something of what Lord Golden is into.
Yes. This is what we were kind of speculating about, how these rumors started before or when the rumors started. And this is rumors that this is the day of, like the day after they got back from Buckkeep. So rumors have been about Lord Golden for a while, and they could have flown from the Brisinga's castle, right? With Civil being there, and that the servants talking about that because it was in front of everybody.
But that's really fast for news to travel.
Is it if people left that day, like the next day? Because then Lord Golden and Tom Badgerlock and Laurel went into the wilderness before, and they spent a week out there getting the prince and then coming back. If somebody left the Brisinga's Galekeep, rumors could have started earlier.
But the people who are at Galekeep aren't big nobles, and it's not like they were coming from Buckkeep. They were coming from the local area. So they would have had to have left that day and then gone to Buckkeep.
But it was in front of everybody, including servants.
Right. But I'm still saying they would have had to be in Buck.
Well, we also know that there's lots of shipments, right? People
That's
come
true.
to because
Okay.
you can't get by river, so people with wagons go up there, deliver food and things like that. Servants are going to talk about the latest juicy gossip of the visiting noble that's treated like royalty in Galekeep.
That's true. You're right. Okay. I wasn't thinking about that. I mean, I know that servants talk, obviously, but I was saying like they're from
Right.
different towns, so I don't know how they'd get, but
There's has to be travel in between.
yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess. But either way, I find it interesting how Fitz doesn't know what he's implying. You'd think
It's not even in Fitz's head
no.
because he knows the fool, right? He thinks he knows the fool.
I guess, but he also does know what the fool did at Galekeep. So you'd think that he would at least have some inkling and would in that moment shut it down. Maybe it's
But why would it, extend to him, he probably thinks.
yeah, I guess. I don't know. Either way, it is really interesting, though, to see that it's already spreading. One day into their time back, and
Right.
everybody knows.
Fitz is angry, confronts the guards, and is now marked by the guards.
Yes, which is not at all what he wanted. But he does have a good point. Like, just because it's peacetime doesn't mean there's not people who are disgruntled.
Guards also have a good point. You don't want to insult the foreign, nobles.
Right. But also, I feel like you should be able to pick out people you don't recognize.
Right.
That aren't from around here. At the very least, notice what they're wearing to know. Like, hey, those are probably visiting nobles. Also, why would visiting nobles not be staying in the keep? If they're important.
They also have like soldiers and guards and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but they're not worried about insulting the soldiers. And
you have to remember the Out Islanders don't have nobles. They have merchants that came along.
That's true. But they should still be at the keep is my argument. Like, they should be in there. I don't know. Whatever.
Maybe there's not enough room.
Fitz does have a point, but also he knows to himself in the middle of that, he's like, I went about this wrong. I should have just told Chade.
Yep. He walks into Buckkeep Castle and he's feeling foolish and dissatisfied. He's like, I gotta speak with Kettrikin.
Yeah, he's ready to talk to the upper management. He's gonna write a strongly worded letter.
But also he knows that she's not gonna have a moment to spare for a while because she's gonna be super busy.
Exactly, because her son is in the middle of his betrothal ceremony. So there's a lot going on.
So he goes to the kitchen and he puts together a breakfast tray for Lord Golden. And as he leaves the kitchen, a garden maid with a tray of flowers on her arm greeted me. "You're Lord Golden's man?" she asked, and at my nod she motioned me to a halt, so she could add a bouquet of fresh-cut flowers and a tiny nosegay of sweet white buds to the tray I carried. "For his lordship," she told me needlessly, and then hastened on her way. I climbed the stairs to Lord Golden's chambers, knocked, and then entered. The door to his bedchamber was closed, but before I had finished setting out his breakfast things, he emerged fully dressed. His gleaming hair had been smoothed back from his brow and was secured at the nape of his neck with a blue silk ribbon. A blue jacket was slung over his arm. He wore a shirt of white silk, the chest puffed with lace, and blue leggings a shade darker than the jacket. With the gold of his hair and his amber eyes, the effect was like a summer sky. He smiled warmly at me. "Good to see that you've realized your duties require you to arise early, Tom Badgerlock. Now, if only your taste in clothing would likewise awaken." And Fitz says, no, the truth is I just didn't go to sleep.
Yeah, Hap didn't come home until the wee hours of the morning, which Fitz is immediately dropping pretenses. Yeah. Lord Golden is in character, and Fitz sort of drops it and is like, whatever, here's what happened.
On my walk home, I encountered some piebalds.
Yes, which immediately drops Fool's facade because he then asks, have you been hurt? Are you okay?
He gestures Fool to the table, and they both sit down and uncover the dishes for Lord Golden here. It's like, no, that was not their intention. They just wanted me to know that they lived and that they know who I am and that I'm witted.
And also that his wolf is dead.
Right. It was as if I could live with that truth so long as I did not utter it aloud. He had to force those words out. I coughed and hastily took up the cut flowers. I handed the nosegay to him and muttered, "I'll put these by your bedside." "Thank you," he returned in a voice as muted as mine. I found a vase in his room. Evidently, even the garden maid was more familiar with Lord Golden's niceties than I was.
So that's really important because this maid does know who Lord Golden actually is.
Yeah, her name is Garetha, I think.
Maybe? She was nice to him when he was the fool.
Yes, and recognizes him. He's the only one, really, who recognized him.
Yes, and apparently the reason he knows this is because they met in the gardens or something. Nosegays is a thing that connects them together. She would put those on his pillow or something when he was...
See, the thing is, though, later down when they have their argument, doesn't the fool say, "I thought you were bringing me those flowers"?
Yes. So he doesn't realize it now, but later he will put it together. But the maid that Fitz came across is Garetha, who knows who he is. And it freaks him out when he realizes somebody knows that he's the fool. which is fair because why would you recognize?
Right. Yeah.
Unless you really knew him. So that would be a little bit scary.
But I believe that was also someone who was actually nice to him as the fool. So he does remember her fondly.
Right. But it does put more meaning into the fact that he's wearing that nosegay on his lapel after Fitz is the one who gave it to him.
Right.
He thinks.
Yes.
But Fitz comes back from putting the flowers in Lord Golden's room and says that he needs to talk to Chade. He doesn't really know how to contact him because obviously he's not going to be upstairs in his old rooms.
And the secret passages probably connect to his new rooms, but he's not going to tell me the way.
Right.
when the fool suggests that.
Yes. Then he asks how soon the fool would be able to set up a meeting. And
how late he was up last night.
Yes, and Fool reveals that Chade was partying the night away.
For
much
an old
longer.
man, he finds an amazing wealth of energy when he wishes to enjoy himself.
Yes. But he is willing to send a page to ask Lord Chade to ride with him in the afternoon and hopes that is enough. That's soon enough.
Yeah.
And Fitz says it's going to have to be, and it ensures that he'll be fully awake by then.
Right. Right. There is suddenly so much to think about, so many things I must worry about. If these Piebalds know about me, then they know about the prince. Did you recognize any of them? Were they from Lodwine's band? It was dark, and they stayed well back from me. I heard a woman's voice and a man's, but I'm sure there were at least 3 of them. One was bonded with a dog, and another with a small, swift mammal, a rat or a weasel or a squirrel, perhaps. I took a breath. I want the guards at Buckkeep's gate to be put up on alert, and the prince should have someone accompanying him at all times. A tutor of the well-muscled sort, as Chade himself once suggested. And I need to make arrangements with Chade for ways to contact him if I need his help or advice immediately. And the keep should be patrolled daily for rats, especially the prince's chamber. He took a breath to speak, then bit down on his questions. Instead, he said, I fear I must give you one more thing to think about. Prince Dutiful passed a note to me last night demanding to know when you will begin his skill lessons. He wrote down those words? At Lord Golden's reluctant nod, I was horrified. Fitz then says he's been aware of the prince missing him. He's felt a couple feeble attempts to contact him through the skill link, but has been able to shut that down because the prince is untrained and he doesn't need those distractions yet. And it's literally been a day.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Fitz is like, we will get to it when we get to it, but didn't know how badly the prince was missing him.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting to, again, we see him putting up walls and staying lonely instead of reaching out to people who care about him. But interesting in this moment how even with Dutiful, he's like, no, don't get too close. Like, you're missing me. I can tell you're missing me. I don't want any of that right now.
And he says, oh, the boy must be taught caution. Some things should never be committed to paper, and those... And then he realizes he wrote down everything on paper and left them in his cabin.
Yes, and didn't even lock him up.
Yep.
And he must have gone pale, he thinks, because the fool asks if he's about to have another seizure. And that's when he lets Fool know, no, all of those scrolls were never locked away. And if these Piebalds know who I am, they could put together where I used to live. And he's like, obviously I had Hap lock up the cabin when I left, but he wouldn't have hidden the scrolls or locked those up. He would have just locked the door. So, and the fool knows exactly how incriminating those scrolls are because he read them all.
His eyes were huge. Not only my own identity was bared there, but also many farcier matters better left forgotten. And personal vulnerabilities were also exposed in those cursed scrolls. Molly, my lost love, Nettle, my bastard daughter, how could I have been so stupid as to such thoughts to paper? No secret was safe unless it was locked solely in a man's own mind. It should all have been burned long ago.
Interesting that he has this revelation, and yet still continues to write down his story.
Well, now he's in Buckkeep.
Well, yes, it's different now. I've learned my lesson.
He can put them in Chade's old room.
Exactly.
You know? The wall room. And then he's like immediately saying like, okay, fool, you have to see Chade today. I have to go immediately to my cottage.
Now. Today.
I need to go and take care of this. And the fool is like, caution, my friend. This could be kind of what they want. They're going to be watching you. You know that? So like,
yeah.
Why would you take the risk to do this now?
Fitz, if they are gone, it is already too late. If Tom Badgerlock goes racing off today, you will only stir curiosity and invite pursuit. You may lead the Piebalds straight to them. They will be expecting you to bolt after they threatened you. They'll be watching the gates of Buckkeep. So think coolly. It could be that your fears are groundless. How would they connect Tom Badgerlock to Hap, let alone to know where the boy came from? Take no reckless action. See Chade first and tell him what you fear. And speak to Prince Dutiful, and his betrothal is tonight. The lad holds himself well, but he is a thin and brittle facade. See him, reassure him. Perhaps someone else could be dispatched to. No, I cut him off firmly. I must go myself. Some of what is there I will take, and the rest I will destroy. And then Fitz is just thinking about all of the evidence that has been left at that cabin. There is the charging buck, the symbol of the bastard, carved into his table. There is just signs of himself everywhere and fingerprints of who he is. Even his garden is an insight to who he is. And he's just feeling so stupid at letting so much of himself be left bare for anyone to come across.
And he decides to burn everything, basically. The fool's like, eat something, then wash your face and change your clothes. Make no abrupt decisions. If we hold our course, we'll survive this, Fitz. Badgerlock, I reminded him and hauled myself to my feet. The rules, I decided, must be adhered to sharply. I beg pardon, my lord. I felt a moment's faintness, but I am recovered now. I apologize for interrupting your breakfast.
I do feel really bad for Fitz in this moment. I'm glad that he has Fool there to help talking him through things, because I do think he does sort of jump into things sometimes without fully thinking, especially when emotion is dictating what to do. He can think ahead and can think through different things, but his knee-jerk reaction is to just race ahead. And so in this moment, it is really important that he is told, hey, they might be wanting you to lead them directly to all that stuff.
Right.
Take
Chill.
a breath. And then also there's other things that are important too. Just take a minute. As well as we see, again, that pattern of like, okay, I need to be better at this facade. I need to really embody this role, which I think is the third time he's now said that, where maybe the fourth, where he's like, oh, I'm getting lackadaisical on this whole Tom Badgerlock thing. I need to really dig in deep again. And I do think in this moment, it is sort of raising that barrier between himself and Beloved, because he is sort of using that to keep them away.
He feels vulnerable right now, right?
Yes.
So he needs to raise kind of those walls, and he tries to resume his role completely and tries to do little tasks around the room, but realizes there's nothing really to do because Lord Golden's innate tidiness had left him little to do as a servant. I suddenly perceived that his neatness was part of his privacy. He had schooled himself to leave no signs of himself save those that he wished to be seen. It was a discipline I would do well to adopt. Would my lord excuse me for a few moments? Certainly. I expect to go out shortly, Badgerlock. See that you clear away the breakfast things, bring fresh water for the pitchers, tidy the hearth, and bring wood for the fire. Then I suggest you continue to sharpen your fighting skills with the guardsmen. I shall expect you to accompany me when I ride this afternoon. Please see that you are dressed appropriately. Yes, my lord.
He then goes back to his chamber and leaves Beloved alone, eating. And he starts looking at all the stuff he's left in his room. He decides that he doesn't want to leave anything that ties back to himself and his old life at the cottage out where anybody could find it, and decides basically everything he has to go up to Chade's rooms.
Yes.
And I mean, there's some things, obviously clothes, that he's going to leave behind, but he can't leave the lockpicks. He can't leave the sword. He can't leave anything behind because it might touch back on who he is. And if somebody goes through, might be able to piece something together.
And then he finds a saltwater shriveled purse with a lump in it. Leather strings had dried shut and stiff. I had to cut them to get it open. When I shook out the contents, the lump was the odd figurine the prince had picked up on the beach during our ill-fated skill adventure. I slid it back into the ruined purse to return to him later and put it on top of my bundle. Then I shut the outer door to my bedchamber and went up all the way to Chade's tower. So yeah, he's clearing out his room, so he's just Tom Badgerlock in his room now.
Yes. And mention of the figurine.
Yes, yeah.
He still has it. And it doesn't make him think of the feathers that he has hidden that he needs to tell Beloved about still.
Right.
I'm annoyed. I want them to talk about
He's
it.
got a lot of stuff on his mind.
There's a lot of things happening. Also, something that we didn't quite touch on, we a little bit breezed over, was that the flower that the maid gave to Fitz outside of the bouquet is nosegay. It's also what the fool / Lord Golden pins to his lapel. But nosegay is also, once again, connected to Molly in a little bit.
Molly Nosegay, what her mother called her.
Yes. And so that's a fun little detail that the nosegay once again makes an appearance.
Yeah.
And is connected to someone important.
Thank you for tuning in for this chapter 1. I'm excited to kind of delve into the rest of this book.
Yeah.
Starts off a lot quicker than I remembered, which it might be just the contrast between Fool's Errand, where it's like 6 chapters before anything happens.
Yes. Well, we did sort of leave off in the middle of something going on, so
True.
It's nice to sort of pick up and get going.
It's a book too.
Yes.
So if you have thoughts on this chapter, please let us know. You can email us at isfitzhappy@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, isfitzhappy.com or isfitzhappy.podbean.com. Find links to all of our socials there. We are at Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, Reddit, and I said Instagram, right?
Yep.
Okay. We're at isfitzhappy at all of them.
Yep. Any social media, basically.
Yes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Can't wait to hear from you.
See you next week. Okay, now we get to talk about our favorite part, which is what you guys have brought to our attention.
And before we do, I do want to give a thanks and shout out to Anna and Neva, as always, for contributing and supporting us on Ko-fi, as well as Nikhil and Degenhart. Thank you so much for supporting us as well. Really appreciate that.
We really do. Thanks, guys. Now back onto the fun stuff. We'll talk about what you guys have brought forward, starting first with a YouTube comment.
Yeah, and on YouTube, we have Long Pause Library, who chimed in on our latest episode, the prologue, kind of responding to our music conversation and topic, saying that they listen to music and read books the same way that I do, where like if you're on your computer, you can have as many sources of noise as possible, but if you're reading, you're reading. Unless Long Pause Library says they're reading at work, which like power to you for reading at work, first of all, that's awesome. But they would listen to music to block out other people's noise, use it kind of as like a background block in order to concentrate on reading. So I think I could agree with that. But yeah, good on you for reading at work. That's awesome.
Yeah. I always admire all the people in lunchroom reading. I'm like, oh, that could be me.
Yeah.
But I can't actually stop myself in 30 minutes, so it will never be me. So thank you. And we also got, on the same topic, an email from listener Jess, who wrote in to say that they don't generally listen to music while reading. However, when I was a teenager, I read The Power of One by Bryce Courtenay. It's set in South Africa, and part of the book has these amazing descriptions of South African men singing and how their voices sounded together. It's very vivid and emotional, and there's some very tense sections in that part of the book. And at the time, I also happened to be listening to a mixtape that had some Paul Simon songs from his Graceland album. which have some backing South African men's vocals scattered in there here and there. There's a powerful combination, and my brain now links the two together. I can't hear Paul Simon without thinking of the power of one and the main character, little PK, at the South African prison, and the inmates' voices all rising up together. That was in the 90s, and it's still a really striking feeling when it happens.
Which is really, really fun to kind of hear about an anecdotal experience linking two pieces of media together so intrinsically.
Yeah, I think that does happen for a lot of people, though.
Yeah.
Where, like, especially with music, because, you know, your brains are wired to remember music better than other things. You can really tie experiences to music. So that's fun to see it happen with a book.
Thanks for sharing that, Jess.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Oh, but also Jess says that they're looking forward to The Golden Fool, and that the first time that they read this book, they remember being cranky at Chade for not being able to work out the mystery behind the Out Islands quicker. I felt like it was something he should have been able to figure out, although maybe it's in the next book. So
I kind of feel the same, but I felt like it was, for me being cranky at Chade, was more his pushing the skill thing. I think I was like very upset with him about like trying to, you know, dive into that head first.
I feel like I remember being frustrated with Chade, but also thinking like maybe it was supposed to be a show of how old he's gotten and how he's not as put together as Fitz first thought.
Yeah.
That they're like, now that Fitz is closer, he can really see the cracks in the armor. So, yeah, something to look out for, and definitely though. So thank you, Jess, for bringing that up. We also got an email from Degenhart.
Yes, who points out that this chapter that we just read and discussed also has nosegays in it. So there's something going on.
Tinfoil hat time. there's maybe, something. Dig deeper.
Maybe Robin Hobb just really likes nosegays.
Yeah. And you know what? I've been trying to think about this. Like, what could it be? And I feel like the best link I have is that the people presenting the nosegays, maybe, or I don't know, the people associated with the nosegays or using the nosegays are people who have one-sided love, which is, I mean, Molly doesn't, I don't know, it's hard. Fitz thinks it's a one-sided love, but then
if I go to Google and type in nosegay, there's not a specific nosegay flower, right? It is a small gathered bouquet of flowers and greenery, typically 4 to 5 inches in diameter. It's often given as a gift and can be an alternative to a corsage. So it's kind of like a small grouping of a couple flowers and herbs or whatever. So it's not a specific thing. So maybe it's just a word that Robin Hobb likes to use as like a small gathering of flowers.
Interesting.
Maybe it's not something specific that she's thinking of.
The plot thickens.
Yeah.
I'll keep working on my tinfoil hat theory about it.
Let it ruminate in the back of your brain for a little bit.
Lots of strands to wrap, you know? So
before you come out with like, Ida was actually Ida Nosegay.
You never know. It pays to look into things.
Right.
But Degenhart also commented on Blue Sky to let us know that they believe that potentially the Duke of Buck position that Canny previously was going to hold could have just been done away with because he became king instead of Duke.
Right. Nothing nefarious, not like purposely doing away with that role or anything, but just because he was in line to be Duke of Buck and became king, and then there was no appointee after that because his line was technically just going to be the royal line now.
Right. Which is a little strange if you think about it, because that means that even though the Canny and his father were plotting for the throne, they never had a backup successor for the dukedom.
Right, yeah.
Which is kind of a weird thing, but I mean, hey.
You don't need it if you're the king, I guess.
That's true. There's always a second child. You never know. Thank you, Degenhart, for reaching out. And thank you, everybody who reaches out. We really enjoy hearing from you guys and hearing your fun tinfoil hat theories or just things that make you think of the books. all of it is great, and we can't wait to hear what else we have to say next week.